Hello everyone, and welcome to a little bit of nightmares, where we talk about anything to do with little nightmares. Here we encourage each other to delve deeper into this dark, distorted, and dangerous world, whilst creating interesting theories along the way. So without further ado, let's begin. In my last video, we looked at the living nightmares known as the fairgoers. The fun fair is already a terrifying place, but what happens if we add the Conies to the mix? If you don't know what these are, then I advise watching this short. And have created some original ideas and characters, and I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to the Conies. These creatures are made of old mannequin parts and resemble that of a bunny. They have violent intent and won't hesitate to attack at any given moment. Although they are built from very poor materials, they are very fast and agile, so Lo will need to think even faster and attack with his trusty bow and arrow. Alone can also fight these creatures, but will have a noticeable disadvantage, as her weapon only permits close range combat, leaving her vulnerable to attack. It is unknown who is making these bloodthirsty bunnies, but whoever they are... Just to clarify, none of these gameplay ideas or settings have been confirmed by Bandai or Supermassive. This series is merely a bit of fun while we wait for the game's release in 2025. So follow me and don't get too scared as we embark on this journey into the fun fair. This series will be split into 3 parts. Part 1, the fairgoers, Part 2, the Conies, and Part 3, the boss, who will remain a mystery until the end. This is in fact Part 2, so if you haven't seen Part 1, I strongly advise doing so first. Lo and Alone have just escaped the terrifying fairgoers, and are heading further into the fun fair. They continue through the hallway, and through a small gap to enter the first tent. They are, to their excitement, met with a well-lit theatre in the round, covered in lots of bowling pins, hula hoops, and coloured balls. Alone dashes away from Lo, and begins to play with the hula hoops. Lo, trying to remain focused, begins to search the surrounding area for a key, climbing on the red cushioned chairs that surround the stage below. In Lo's peripheral, he spots a light coming from the cracks in a large metal door, next to which is a button. Lo eagerly reaches to press it, trying desperately to enter. He leaps onto one of the chairs as dust is pushed out of it, making Lo begin to cough. He waits a second to recover from this sudden coughing fit, then jumps, stretching his arms as far as he can, but still, he misses the button. Feeling defeat, he calls for Alone's assistance. She rushes to Lo, holding a multicoloured beach ball tightly in her hand. With a brief adjustment in her aim, she hurls the ball towards the button. The door slides open. As Alone rushes to reclaim her favourite toy, she chases the ball, and it bounces down the stairs. While Alone is busy retrieving her ball, Lo cautiously enters the next room. He accidentally steps in a pool of blood. Noticing this, he jumps forwards, disgusted, causing him to trip on a broken cage. He looks around him to see stacks of different sized cages, covered in blood and completely destroyed. Shifting his gaze to the centre of the room, he sees a large cage surrounding the body of a deceased elephant. Alone shouts for Lo, as a Coney appears from behind the cage, creeping towards Lo. It pounces at him, knocking him over. Alone rushes to try and pull the ferocious furry foe off of her friend. The Coney proceeds to lunge towards Alone and bite her arm, causing her to let go. Alone has no choice but to watch as Lo is dragged across the room by the Coney. He screams for help as he is pulled down a hole dug by the Conies. Alone leaps to her feet and runs to the hole, leaping in it after Lo. She falls for about 10 seconds until she reaches the bottom, landing on a pile of old rotten animal carcasses. The Coney drags Lo towards a crate and kicks the door shut, turning to Alone and letting out a threatening growl. 2 more Conies approach the scene. Alone removes her wrench from her back and readies herself for a fight. She tightly grips the handle of the wrench. Her nose begins to bleed with the weight of this stressful situation. Noticing the droplets of blood dripping onto her clothes, she wipes her nose with her sleeve. One of the Conies charge at her, ready to kill. A row of sharp teeth stretch out from inside the Coney's mouth, ready to sink deep into its prey. Alone swings her wrench directly at the Coney's head, dislocating its jaw and leaving it whimpering in pain. The other 2 Conies follow and also charge at Alone. But these she doesn't wound. She swings at both of these creatures with all her strength, leaving them limp. Alone falls to the ground, exhausted. She pants for air. She would have fallen asleep if it wasn't for her friends still being in danger. She lifts her wrench and pushes herself off the ground. Slowly, she makes her way to the cage. Lo gives her a glance of thankfulness, before they both heave the cage open. Alone again wipes her nose, not noticing the Coney with the dislocated jaw slowly approaching from behind her. Is just about to bite her left arm when an arrow whizzes past her ear and into the head of the Coney. Alone turns around in shock and stares at the dead Coney on the floor. She lets out an irritated grunt and lifts her wrench above her head. Smack. She slams it down onto the Coney. Smack. Again. Smack. 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 She hits the lifeless Coney with her weapon. Smack. Crack. The Coney shatters into pieces. Wooden fur is scattered across the room. Alone almost collapses, but Lo catches her. He helps her past the cages and through a tunnel to enter a strange room. They stumble towards the centre, where they are surrounded by 5 holes in the ground. Alone sits to rest on the floor, whilst Lo aims around the room with his bow and arrow, keeping a lookout for any nearby Conies. Their heads jolt to the ground when they hear rustling sounds. Alone stands and readies her wrench when a hand appears in front of her, blocking her from stepping closer to the holes. Lo signals her to sit down and rest, but she declines the offer. They spin in circles, trying to locate the source of the sound, when a Coney leaps out of the hole. Lo swiftly fires an arrow into its head. Another jumps at him through a hole. It meets the same demise. Alone rushes to find something to cover the holes and stop the oncoming danger. While Lo plays a game of Whack-A-Coney, Alone looks around the room for a solution. She runs towards a huge stone boulder in the corner of the room and uses her wrench to pull it free from the muddy terrain holding it in place. To her regret, a hole is uncovered by her action, and the Coney leaps out, grabbing her arms with its wooden claws. Her screams alert Lo, but his shifted priorities of assisting his best friend results in him becoming distracted, and Conies leap out of the holes, drowning Lo and Alone in a sea of wood and fur. Lo reaches his hand into the air, closes his eyes, and waits for death. Pain fills his body as teeth plunge into his skin. He screams, and then nothing. He opens his eyes and looks instantly at his arms. His injuries have all disappeared. He turns to see Alone, sat next to him, doing the same. They both glance around the room, confused. Lo and Alone find themselves sat on a bed in a plain room. Curious, they jump to the floor and make their way towards the door. Lo throws Alone into the air to grab onto the handle, and the door slowly begins to open. The ground begins to shake, and Lo and Alone lose consciousness. They wake again at the funfair. The room now somehow free of Conies. They climb a ladder to the surface. The big top is now in sight. They make their way through the grassy pathway, under the draped entrance, and towards the stage, and find a large box in the centre of the room. A spotlight shifts to illuminate the box. The lid pops off and slides onto the wooden floorboards. Then, something emerges from the box, untangling itself until it reaches its normal form. The contortionist is ready to begin his performance. So that's the end of part 2. Be sure to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications because I really enjoyed making this video and plan on making part 3 very soon. Let me know what you guys thought of my creation of the Conies and get ready for the contortionist in part 3. Until next time, this has been a little bit of nightmares.